Hey y'all, welcome back to our weekly video series. I'm Peyton and I'm joined by Corey and Yaila. And so today we're going to talk about something that is an issue for a lot of lightworkers and starseeds, and that is insecurity. And this is something we don't get a chance to talk about all that much, considering how many of us have struggled with this at some point in our journey. So in today's video, we are going to be talking about why this happens and what you can do to heal it. So let's start with you, Yaila. How do you help people who are struggling with insecurity and are looking for a way to move past that?
Yeah, this is a really great topic, and I'm glad we are covering what to do when you're feeling insecure. Because it's definitely a topic that I was curious the ladies' take on it as well, because it's something that I know I continually work on, and I'm supporting clients and students all the time with feelings of insecurity. So, what are some ways that you can go about when you notice that you are feeling more insecure? There's a lot of layers to feeling insecure or having insecurities pop up in different ways in your everyday life, how you're interacting with people. So, something that I've noticed is we are in that comparison mode when we are either anxious about a certain outcome happening or we're really wanting something to come into fruition or we've been working on it for a while and we just have this anxiousness about it. We start to compare and contrast ourselves with people and things around us. And so there's that saying out there, comparison is the thief of joy. So one way you can start to work with healing your insecurity is to help yourself stop the comparison contrast thoughts. How do you do that? One, maybe pull back from social media. Two, maybe look at what is the hurry? What is the rush? What is this anxiousness that's being stirred up in your space when you are comparing yourself to other people? And is it even valid? A lot of times when we are putting the pressure on ourselves, we're comparing our starting point to somebody's endpoint, or they've like 20, 30 steps ahead of where we are. We assume we're supposed to go from 0 to 60 in like a day or a week or a month. We're just very anxious for a certain outcome to happen. So you want to be mindful of, one, what is the time frame pressure that you're putting on yourself? And then two, are you comparing yourself to somebody else or something else around you? It's a really, really big one. Another thing I think of when insecurities pop up and how to heal it, many times it's something for us to look at for ourselves. It's something that we are either what's the word I'm trying to think of? We're almost like it's something that we are not happy about ourselves with. There's something that we are putting ourselves down for, or we wish we were different about ourselves. Kind of ties into that comparison, but even if you're not comparing yourself to other people, there's something you wish you could be more of, do more of, or even less of. I wish I was less like this because however it shows up into your life, it could be really frustrating or annoying for you. And so when you are starting to feel insecure, I always like to bring in our emotions are roadmaps. They're not a life sentence. You can look at what is showing up as a roadmap for yourself, as a guide, and you get to choose, do you still want to travel down that path? Or would you like to choose a different path, choose a different way to go? So if insecurity is popping up, it's a great way for you to kind of do some inner healing work. Some suggestions I find really helpful for myself and other people is starting to focus on a self-love practice. Shadow work is a really great one too. Where are these thoughts, feelings, beliefs coming from? Exploring that more, because a lot of times the thoughts and beliefs that we are thinking, we've picked up from the world around us, from other people's beliefs and thoughts, or their pressures on, maybe they had a little mold of who they thought you should or shouldn't be, and that was imposed into your space growing up. And then, you always felt like you weren't quite living up to that mold because it's not who you are. So in a self-love practice, this is something I think is something really valuable to check in pretty much periodically, once a month. And little insight, every new moon, I try to bring in some type of appreciation for myself around that time, because new moons for me are a time to focus on what you want to have more of, in your life and your surroundings. And when you have that love for yourself, it really starts bringing you into alignment to the things that are truly meant for you and in alignment to your heart's desires. So when you can love and appreciate yourself, you can't help but attract those things to you. So setting up a regular, something you can tie it to, we call it an anchor, something you can anchor, whether it's a daily practice or a monthly practice. I know when I did a class before, one of the teachers, she had us write on our mirror, and it had nothing to do with a self-love class, but it was just building your own intuition. And she had us write on our mirror, "Thank you for being a blessing in my life. I love you for who you are and what you are." And our homework for that whole month was to read that to her, or say out loud to ourselves that little mantra. And at first it felt a little awkward looking at myself in the mirror and just like saying these words. But sure enough, after a couple days, a couple weeks, I really started to understand the value of actually giving yourself appreciation, because it's the opposite of that compare and contrast, right? When you can start to appreciate just who you are. It's not what you do. It's not the people that are showing up in your life. It's not all these outside things. When you can start learning to just appreciate you, your beingness, your energy, your heart better than anybody else, it will start to shift you into a path that's more in alignment for what will help you feel more secure. And we have I almost said a movie. We have a video on mirroring. And, the whole concept is the energy, the frequency that you hold within your space, the outside world will reflect back to you. And so when you start to develop some type of self-love practice, and there's so many out there, as that gets stronger within your own world, the outside world will start to reflect that back. And not that you need that outside validation, but it's just, for me, confirmation that what you're doing, where your vibration is at, what you're working to have your vibration at, is actually manifesting for you. So I don't look at the outside world as answers. I look at the outside world as also little road signs, as, am I on the right path? Am I headed to where I want to be going? And these are just little signs that pop up, just like your emotions. It's not a life sentence. It's not you're set in stone. And then one more final thing that I would add in, as far as helping yourself heal from insecurities, is watching the stories you tell. So, we can get into these always, never, not meant for me type of stories that's really all it is. It's a story. It's a belief that we started to create. And once you have a story, it's just like that old fable that's been passed down through generation to generation. It's holding a vibration, it's holding a frequency. And so if you're telling yourself, I always attract this type of person, I'm never going to get XYZ, I'm never going to make it, I'm always going to be second best, these beliefs are just reinstilling those things that are not working for you. So you really want to be careful about the story that you tell yourself. And just like you fell for that story that wasn't true, you can fall for a new story. You can rewrite your story and create the future that you want. And it starts with just having that insight on what is making you feel insecure. It's giving you a sign that you are wanting a different direction. You're wanting something different in your world, which is fine, which is good. That's why we're here. New desires are a good thing. It helps us grow and expand. It's part of the reason why we're in this, reality, is to play with these contrasts, and we get to decide where we want to go from those contrasts. So it's okay to have. That's why I say, I'm always working on insecurities that pop up. I'm like, oh, I got that in my space again. Here we go. And luckily, after learning these tools, yeah, some days I can get caught up in the story. But once you catch it, you're like, oh, wait, that's just the story. Let me start to recreate a new story. What's something I want to step in now versus where I have been? So that's where I like to start with looking at insecurities and how to heal them. How about you, Corey?
That's great, Yaila. Wow. This is a great topic. It really is. And so when we decided to do it, I was like, really? No. Yes. I mean, I was like, really? But it is a great topic. And insecurities is a lifelong process, has been my experience. And it's one of the things that with our students and clients, I find that it's really the first thing that pops up, when we start, at least for me, I know when I start working, I know you will agree, but when I first start working with students and some of the clients, and a lot of clients come to me because of their insecurities. And it's our human condition. It is something that needs to be healed. One of the things that I have noticed is that if we don't look at our insecurities, we become bitter and blame others. I've noticed that with even myself and the people that I work with. I know that if a client comes to me and they have insecurities and they're bitter at other people, or just bitter, period, I go, there's some insecurities there. And so it's often a place to start. I spent a lot of time, I was a makeup artist for, I still do makeup, but, in the industry for 35 years, behind the camera, getting actors and actresses ready, and amazing at my job. I can actually really say that, really amazing. And when it comes to doing that sort of thing, I'm very confident in it. And there isn't anyone who can tell me any different because of my so many years doing it. And then when we started to do these videos, gosh, it's been well over a year, heading into almost 2 years. And I was like, yeah, we're going to do this. Oh, there went some insecurities. I was like, what? Wait a minute. And it really caught me off guard. And it's because I know for me, I had these high expectations of myself. And the insecurities are the compare and despair. We have social media now too, where there's a lot out there and there's a lot to compare ourselves to. And that leads to insecurities. And so what does that mean? It's a trigger. It's not feeling good enough, having unrealistic expectations of oneself or others. And I know for me, I loved what you said, Yaila, about self-love, and self-care. What I realized, well before we started doing these videos, is that I realized I needed to embark on a new journey, which always brings up insecurities for me, a new adventure on self-love and self-care. And for me, it took, and I have my clients do this, is do an act of self-care. Start with just giving yourself one act of self-care. Maybe it's a mani-pedi. Maybe it's buying, something new for yourself. Maybe it's taking 5 minutes, which is never enough, but even half an hour to just read a book if you want, take a nap. Because I think that we don't realize, because in this busy world, we become unaware of that we're even doing anything to care for ourselves, which leads to self-love, because we're always in that compare and despair. I should be doing this. It's that should thing again. Do not should all over yourself. You know, I was about to add, stop shoulding all over yourself. I say this to my clients all the time, and myself when I get into the shoulds. It always leads to an insecurity, because it's something. I liked what you said, Yaila, about something that's in our heads. It's a story we're telling ourselves. And so how do you heal it? You know, for me, I needed to take the action and actually recognize, because I'd gotten, you know, working I always say 20 trillion hours a day, 16 hours a day, you know, 5 days a week, even 3 days a week, not getting enough sleep, giving up a lot of the things I love to do. But to even recognize what self-care and self-love was by picking something. And even if it was more than one a day, or picking just one a day and maybe doing more, bringing it into my awareness of what that action was. Oh, you know what? You know, making a decision to do something, maybe something that I wanted to do, and maybe saying, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that for you or with you right now. That recognizing, oh my gosh, that's an act of self-love and self-care. That's, you know, for me, where I started. And I often start my clients with that. And also the shadow work. You know, the shadow work, I think I know oftentimes with myself and my clients, you know, that comes a little later, because to shadow work it's a deep dive. It's a deep dive, but it's so rewarding. It is so rewarding. And shadow work is, you know, meditation, writing, leaving yourself alone, putting the bat down when you're beating yourself up. Just those things to heal self-love. And for me, it was the acts. I had to act my way into right thinking, you know, and do those acts. And then I started to feel the self-love and the self-care. And there's periods of times too where we, you know, we feel really good about ourselves, and, you know, the universe will just, you know, kick something up. Oh, there's that insecurity again. I have found that, you know, I think at least the last, well, quite a few years, you know, doing this energy work is also a form of working on yourself and your insecurities and seeing life from a different perspective. And as many years as, you know, we all have been doing it, it's now something that has become a steady, you know, I know in my life, and I encourage it for students and clients, is to find something to help us take a look at ourselves and to fall in love with ourselves, because the world is really harsh. Hence insecurities. And so finding a way to love yourself. So I took astrology, took a look, you know, started studying my own chart, and was having these epiphanies of really, you know, these little magic things I had within myself, or these feelings that I thought that I, you know, I had this knowing, but looking or having your chart done, you know, an astrology chart is so revealing about yourself, but it helps to find those positive aspects to focus on. Yes, the shadow work needs to be done, But for me, there has to be a light at the end of the tunnel, you know. And so getting your astrology chart done is a great way to take a look at maybe why you have the insecurities. And that way you don't feel so isolated and alone, knowing that, you know, we're all human. We all have energies that play in our lives that we signed up for from the other side. So I love doing, you know, astrology to start helping with those insecurities and to point out the positive aspects, and also a way to heal those insecurities. But first of all, realizing that it is a story, you know, and it could be a trauma too, a past trauma, you know, in childhood. Could be somebody else's voice in your head. But if we don't take a look at it, we don't give ourselves a chance to fall in love with ourselves. And that, for me, is really the most important thing. And what I encourage my clients and my students to do is that's one of my missions, to help people fall in love with themselves. Because often the society, you know, this world is tough. It can be very tough. And so we can use all the support that we can get. And so, yeah, those are a few of the things about insecurities and healing insecurities. Don't do it alone. You know, you don't have to do it alone. Yes, it's an inside job. Only you can do the work. But there's a lot of ways in which you can start that healing. And it's never cured. It's always deeper layers. But it doesn't mean that we haven't done the work, or that we're a bad person or slack. It just means it's another layer. So, Peyton, what have you got on healing insecurities?
Yeah, this is such a great topic, because this is something that I see so often in light workers. And as you guys said, I think you guys made such amazing points, and I really second everything that y'all said, because this is one of those things that is not always an easy fix. And so a lot of people struggle with kind of coming to terms with, you know, what do I do with this if I notice that this is something that you struggle with maybe more than other people? And I think one of the reasons for that is so many of us, even if we don't consider ourselves to be, we're kind of trained to be people pleasers. And especially if you are a Pleiadian starseeds are notorious for insecurity issues. So this is something that I see in so many of my starseed clients, that just our whole culture teaches us to look outside of ourselves for validation and approval. Our whole social system is based on that. Our whole economy is based on that, on getting the approval of people outside of ourselves. So what that tends to do, and I think one of the reasons why this comes up so often in starseeds and light workers, is we're kind of trained in our culture to hide who we truly are, because we're afraid if we show ourselves, we're going to be judged or we're going to be rejected. And on top of that, we tend to have a lot of programming from our families, our education system, even ancestral programming, and I know the three of us have talked about this on several occasions, being raised to do what you're told, to follow what everyone else is doing, not question it, don't shake the boat. I mean, how many of us have had that messaging from our entire life? It's so common that we have all just been marinating in this message of go along, don't rock the boat. And so what happens is, what we realize as light workers and starseeds, that is all matrix. The matrix is all about control and conformity. So what are we trained to do? We're trained to go along with the herd, right? And so what happens is we're very uncertain about showing who we truly are because our whole world is wearing a mask. That's what we're finding out right now. Our whole world is based on manipulation and things not being quite what they seem to be. So the thought of showing our true selves when everyone else is hiding behind a mask, it's a little scary. And so one of the things that happens, and why I think this is such a big deal for people on their spiritual path, is as light workers and starseeds, we're here to bring down the matrix. We are here to poke the bear. And so what that means is being our authentic self and shining our light to break down this old system. But that's scary because no one else is doing it. So when you're the only one showing your authentic self, it can be a little scary. And so I think that's why this comes up in so many light workers, is because we know that our soul mission is to share who we truly are, to share our light with the world. That's what we're here to do. But we can't do that if we're playing along with hiding behind masks, doing what everyone, else is doing. So there's kind of this inconsistency in light workers that our very soul mission is to be authentic. We can't do that if we're raised with all these programs that we have been raised with, which are all about not rocking the boat. So I think that's one of the reasons why so many light workers and people on their spiritual path bump into this insecurity barrier at some point in their journey. And of course, some people struggle with this much more than others, but it tends to come up, I think, in most of us, and most of the people that I've encountered on the spiritual path, that this rears its head in some way. So if this is something that you recognize, that sounds familiar to you, what do you do about it? How do you heal it? And I love what Corey and Yaila said. Those are great suggestions, and I completely agree with them. And so for me, when I think of healing insecurity, it comes down to two things, and that is being your authentic self. And as the ladies mentioned, self-love, because you have to be a little brave to show your true self these days. And especially when that is as a light worker, when we're saying things that the average people either don't understand at all or feel pretty threatened and freaked out by. When you are sharing a message that goes against the grain of mainstream society, you have to be a little brave to step out and share that. And that's why I know a lot of us, especially those of us who teach this and have taught it for quite a while, we've had to work up to being comfortable saying these things. I don't think any of the three of us 10 years ago would have been on a platform like this talking about what we are talking about. Even the three of us who have worked for a very long time on this had to work our way up to it. And so this is a daunting thing because you do risk being judged. That's just the world we live in. You risk people kind of not understanding you or backing away from you because you're not towing the party line anymore. And so I think that's one of the reasons why it's a particular struggle for light workers, because again, you have to have some courage to stand in your authentic truth, which is what we're being called to do as light workers. So for me, when we talk about healing insecurity, the most important thing is we have to care more about our personal truth and what we're doing in the world than we care about what anyone thinks of that. And that takes a little while to get there. And so for me, it's all about, and what I always recommend to people is baby steps. As the ladies mentioned, this is not something that happens overnight. You don't poof, you're over all your insecurities. Most of us work on this for quite a long time. And for a lot of people, this is a lifetime journey. And so for me, taking small steps is always the way to kind of take on something that's a little challenging. So for me, some things that can be helpful are, can you speak up more? Just stating your truth, because so many light workers, especially if you still have a foot in the 3D world, we tend to bite our tongue when those controversial topics come up, when what we think isn't in line with what everyone else thinks. We just bite our tongue to keep the peace. So how many times do you catch yourself doing that? So that's a baby step you can take to just speak up a little more. Another thing that can be helpful is to actually share what you're thinking without worrying you're going to be judged for it. Because again, a lot of us are programmed just to gloss over things because we don't want to offend anyone. We don't want to get that crazy look. We don't want, all those things that can happen when you have a different perspective than the average person, which all of us do if we're on the spiritual path. So how can you speak up more? Because you never know when what you say is going to be the spark to awaken someone else. But if we're hiding that, it goes against what we are here to do as light workers. And then another thing is, where do you find yourself doing things out of obligation? Because again, that's a way that we act out of insecurity, because we're saying yes to things we want to say no to out of fear of being rejected or judged. So how can you step out of all those things that you do out of obligation that you'd really rather not do? So for me, if you can just take baby steps to just stand in your light more, stand in your truth more, that's the easiest way to start healing insecurities. But again, it's a gradual process. So that's why my second step is always, as the ladies mentioned, self-love. Because again, this is a process. So be easy with yourself. You have a huge amount of programming to overcome. Cultural, family, religious, educational. Every system we have been raised in is encouraging us not to be who we truly are. And so it takes a second to break out of that mold. So self-love is, for me, one of the main ingredients in healing insecurity, because this really cool thing happens as you start to love yourself more. And this was a huge struggle for me. So if y'all are going through this, I feel you. This is something that is a challenge, and it's something that you don't necessarily work out overnight. But for me, what you find is the more you work on self-love, the less you care what the peanut gallery thinks about it. And to me, that is when you are on the path to healing insecurity. And so for me, healing insecurity is about being willing to be your authentic self unapologetically, and let other people react how they will. Because again, when we stand in our truth as light workers, and we are willing to share those uncomfortable thoughts and truths that go against what the mainstream world might be promoting, you never know who you are going to spark with that. You plant that seed, and even if they don't understand you when you say it, the next time someone else says something to them, you have the seeds to have helped someone else awaken. And that's really kind of the point. So to me, the more we can stand in our authentic self and not be ashamed of that or afraid of that, that's how we heal insecurity. So that's my recipe for healing insecurity. I think it all comes back to authenticity. So that's how I approach it. How about you girls? Anything else popping up for you?
Yeah. When you were, that was great, Peyton, when you're talking about being your authentic self, that alone for me made me so insecure, because I thought, I thought I knew myself really well, and I did to a degree. But when somebody said, be your authentic self, suddenly I was like, oh, what is that? What is my authentic self? And that brought up the insecurities. And so for me, it did, it bled over for a little while until I finally said, okay, well, wait a minute, I'm feeling insecure. Oh, all right. Well, then I started working on the insecurities. And as I did that journey, I started to find my authentic self. As you were saying, Peyton, speaking your truth, I never had a voice. That's why when we started doing these videos, I was so excited to have a voice, but I never really had a voice. And so it brought up those insecurities. So by saying that, it is a process, it's progress, not perfection. And sometimes the insecurities come first, and sometimes the situation brings up the insecurities. But nonetheless, it is a call when insecurities come up. It's a call to love ourselves, to heal ourselves, and to heal those shadows that have been buried deep down inside. And it's the opportunity to return to love. Marianne Williamson used to say that. I can't believe that even just came to my mind because it just popped in. But, it's a return to love, loving ourselves, which in turn helps us to see the world in a different way when we step into love and heal those insecurities. And they're just always going to pop up. They really are. And that's okay. That's the little poke, 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 poke. Ooh, there's something to heal. Oh, that's really all I have. Yaila, I can see.
I love what you both are sharing. And what's coming to my mind too is it's kind of a survival thing. If you think about, at least I know for myself and people I've worked with, there is a level of, I always had the story that I didn't belong, speaking into what both Corey and Peyton were talking about. I always had this belief that I was just different. I didn't belong. I didn't fit in. And I was always at the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong people for whatever reason. Because I just felt so different. And so when people, very similar to what you were saying, Corey, like when people are saying like, just be your authentic self, I was just like, I literally felt my whole life, all I was trying to do was fit in. So it took a little bit to even just discover who I truly felt I was, believed I was, because for so long I tried to fit in and be like everybody else. And I'm sure on the outside I looked like just some average white girl with blonde hair, but on the inside I felt so different than everybody else. I thought very different than everybody else. Just my experience just felt different. And for those of you who resonate as being an empath, right? A lot of times being an empath is based off of being in a world around you that was unstable in some way, shape, or form, or many forms. And so you had to anticipate what was coming your way so you could maneuver, you could sense, what energies were coming at you. So you're fine-tuned to the energies. And when you're sensitive to people's judgments, opinions, and things like that, being your authentic self and you're sensitive to that is really, really scary. So that self-love practice is huge to, not by it. It's people's opinions are just their opinions. Their preferences are just their preferences. It's like somebody who likes chocolate cake and somebody who doesn't. It doesn't make you better than, less than. You're not going to get kicked out of the tribe because there's no longer that same survival programming that our bodies, for hundreds of years have been designed with. It's a very different story now. So when you give yourself just that grace and that space and understand that insecurity, expect it to come up. It's going to come up from time to time. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing bad about you. There's actually nothing different about you in that aspect, because I'll tell you this right now, coming from a health coach background, I talk to, hundreds of clients literally a week, and anywhere from the entry level to upper management, and working in theta now as well afterwards. It's the biggest things in everybody's space is I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, and I'm not lovable. It breaks down to those three things, and it shows up in many different ways. And not a single person I've worked with up to this point is immune. I've worked with thousands at this point. So just know having insecurities that pop up actually helps you, can assure you that you actually do fit in to the world a lot more than you believe you are.
And I think that playing off of that, Yaila, I think another reason why this can be such a struggle for people on the spiritual path is because we tend to be extremely sensitive to begin with. So we're more sensitive than the average population, whether that is being an empath, whether that is being someone who is very psychically active. So what happens is we pick up on the disapproval and the resistance that other people have to us that the average person would not even register. And so when we sense disapproval in others, just because so many of us have heightened sensitivity, it's a double whammy because we're not only expecting, to get negative feedback, we're actually reading it from other people's energy fields. So it can make it even harder. And so I think that's why one of the things that so many of us struggle with, on the spiritual path is this issue, because we're more sensitive. So we pick up on when other people are uncomfortable around us or, judging or whatever it might be. Whereas the average person would be just completely oblivious to all of it, not even notice. But as sensitives, we actually pick that up. So it makes it even more challenging, I think, for us. So.
Yeah. And that's I'm telepathic. So reading people's minds, not even wanting to, but hearing actually what they're thinking about me. It was like, oh, but now it doesn't matter, quite honestly. And I can turn off that telepathy as it is. However, I agree with you, both of you, sensitive, being sensitive. I mean, I never thought and the people that I work with never thought that, I belonged, that was just, so yeah, I love that, being sensitive, extra sensitive.
And it is so funny, as both of you mentioned, when you start to talk to people, this is, like you said, Yaila, a universal theme. Almost everyone has this, no matter how much they may seem to be confident, because not only, even if it's not a huge issue in our personal life, we've got that programming. We came into the earth plane and we inherited so many energetic programs that we don't even realize we're running, that probably almost all of us have this issue in some degree.
Yeah. And social media as well. Social media is, I think, not that I'm against it, obviously, but I think that it gave us a lot more to compare ourselves to, actually. But yeah, right. It's a universal thing. It's our human condition. That's what we came here to heal. And insecurity is definitely one of them. So, you're not, for those of you out there, we all have it. You're not the only ones. So it's okay.
Absolutely. Any last thoughts, ladies? Anything else popping in? No. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. I hope this helps you a little bit. If this is something you have been struggling with, just know that pretty much we're all struggling with it. So let us know in the comments if there's anything else you want to know on this topic or any other topic that we have not hit on. We have quite the library built up at this point, so make sure you check that out. And you know where to find us. Our social media is at the bottom of the screen. Connect with us anytime. And we always appreciate your help in getting these videos out. So we thank you for liking it, sharing it, subscribing it, and following us. And as always, we will see you next time. Bye.